Welcome back everyone to another exciting and unbelievable deep dive into the world of rare and valuable coins where ordinary change turns into extraordinary treasures, and today's story might just leave you stunned because we are talking about the 1997 D5-cent coin that has captured the attention of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. A nickel that at first glance looks just like the millions of others minted that same year in Denver, but behind its humble appearance lies a story of minting mishaps, metal mysteries, and jaw-dropping possibilities that have catapulted its estimated value to an astounding $16 million. Yes, you heard that right. $16 million for a single 5-cent piece that has become one of the most astonishing examples of how small mistakes can lead to monumental worth. So sit back as we unravel every detail about what makes this particular 1997 D nickel such an incredible anomaly, how its unique combination of errors and mysteries make it so sought after, and why collectors are willing to pay a fortune for one of these seemingly simple coins that hold a story of minting perfection gone wrong in the most fascinating way imaginable. Because when we look closely at the world of coin collecting, especially United States coinage from the late 20th century, we begin to see that every small imperfection, every double strike, die crack, planchette flaw, and misalignment tells a story not just about the coin itself, but about the history of the US Mint, its technology, and the craftsmanship behind the coins we handle every day without a second thought. And the 1997 D nickel stands as one of the rarest and most intriguing specimens of them all, minted in Denver, where billions of coins have rolled off the presses. But for this one, something extraordinary happened during production. Something so subtle that for years no one realized just how significant it was until careful examination by numismatic experts revealed the chain of minting errors that created this multi-million-dollar marvel. And the story begins with the planchette, the blank metal disc that would eventually be struck into a 5-cent coin. And while most planchets are made from a consistent cupronickel composition, this one appears to have been a transitional or experimental piece, showing traces of improper alloy mixing, an error that causes faint color variations across its surface, with some areas showing unusual golden or coppery hues, almost as if the wrong metal blend was used during the rolling process, and this alone would have made it intriguing. But the real magic happens when you consider the strike itself, because under magnification the 1997 D-era nickel displays doubling along the inscriptions and design elements, particularly around Jefferson's portrait and the word liberty, suggesting a rare double die obverse error that occurs when the die itself is improperly manufactured, creating a secondary image slightly offset from the original, producing a shadow-like doubling effect that collectors absolutely crave. But this coin goes even further, showing misalignment between obverse and reverse, where Monticello on the back is rotated slightly, possibly due to a column misfeed during striking, giving the coin a subtle but visible rotation that adds even more uniqueness. And then there are the die cracks, tiny fissures in the die that leave raised lines on the coin's surface, stretching like lightning bolts across Jefferson's face and neck, evidence of a fatigued die that should have been retired earlier but somehow was used to strike this coin, adding another layer to its anomaly. And on top of all this, faint signs of a partial blockage have been noted on the edge near the rim, meaning part of another coin may have stuck to the die during striking, leaving a ghostly impression on one side of this nickel, a rare and stunning combination that makes this single coin an absolute masterpiece of minting errors, a perfect storm of accidents that could not be replicated intentionally even if someone tried. And when you take all of these factors together, the off-metal planchette, the double die, the rotated alignment, the die cracks, and the partial blockage, you have one of the most complex error combinations ever seen on a modern US nickel, making it a numismatic legend worth millions. And experts speculate that only one or two of these may have escaped the mint unnoticed. As the Denver facility was producing massive quantities in 1997, and quality control at the time relied heavily on random sampling rather than total inspection, which means that while most coins were perfectly normal, a few oddities like this one slipped through the cracks, quite literally, and found their way into circulation, perhaps in a roll of change or in a cash drawer somewhere, unrecognized for years until an observant collector spotted something odd about the shine and the strike, took a closer look under magnification, and realized the magnitude of what they had found. And when news of this discovery broke, the numismatic world was abuzz with speculation, with experts debating the cause of each imperfection, discussing whether the coin represented a transitional experiment, a minting malfunction, or even an intentional test strike gone wrong. But what everyone agreed on was that this nickel was unlike anything seen from the 1990s minting period, and that its condition, error, complexity, and preservation made it a once-in-a-lifetime find, and collectors soon began to chase after rumors of others, scouring rolls of nickels from 1997, in hopes of uncovering similar traits, checking for doubling, rotation, color variations, anything that might hint at a relative of the fabled $16 million specimen. But as of now, no exact duplicate has been verified, making this one truly one of one in its error combination, and the story of its discovery adds to the legend, with tales suggesting it was found in loose change at a gas station or within a collection inherited from a relative, adding that layer of mystery that makes rare coin stories so captivating, because the idea that a nickel worth 5 cents could hide a secret worth millions right in plain sight is what fuels the imagination of collectors everywhere. And when professional grading companies got involved, things only got more interesting, as the coin was carefully examined under microscopic conditions, revealing layer upon layer of anomalies, including restriking marks that suggest it may have been struck twice under slightly different die pressures, leading to deformation of the lettering near the rim where E pluribus unum shows faint ghosting effects, another telltale sign of double striking. And when the grading came back assigning it the highest error classification and an ultra-high grade for its preservation, the market value exploded, with appraisers estimating between $14 and $16 million depending on private auction demand. And such a staggering figure for a nickel is not only about rarity but about story, because collectors pay for narrative as much as for metal, and the narrative here is one of imperfection turned perfection, a literal embodiment of how human error can create beauty and value beyond measure. And the fascination continues to grow as new theories emerge, some suggesting that the die used for this coin might have been one prepared for a foreign contract, possibly explaining the slight compositional differences in the metal, while others think it may have been a leftover die from 1996 or an early prototype for 1998, each possibility adding layers of intrigue. And in the world of numismatics, speculation like this only drives value higher, because every unknown detail becomes part of the myth, and myths, when verified through physical evidence, become priceless, and so collectors hold their breath whenever a 1997 nickel shows even the faintest irregularity, because it might be the next fortune hiding in a handful of change. And while most nickels from that year are worth exactly face value, the allure of the error keeps people checking their jars, their drawers, their piggy banks, dreaming of discovering that one coin with a story like no other. And what's more fascinating is how this coin also represents the technological transition of the US Mint during the 1990s, when digital engraving began merging with traditional hubbing methods, and during this era, minor misalignments in digital calibration could lead to new types of doubling not seen in earlier decades, which might help explain some of the unique visual distortions on the 1997 D-era nickel, especially around Jefferson's eye and the steps of Monticello, where light under magnification reveals faint ghosted outlines from an earlier die impression that was only partially erased before reuse, something mint historians call die re-engraving overlap, an error that can lead to semi-visible design elements and can cause extreme rarity. Next 2006 P5 cent USA coin, where we uncover the hidden treasures in ordinary pocket change, because today we are diving deep into a story that has captured the imagination of coin collectors and treasure hunters all around the world. A story about a coin so small yet so extraordinary that it defies logic, a 2006 5-cent coin that is said to be worth an astounding $15 million due to the incredible combination of minting errors, anomalies, and historical circumstances that make it one of the most valuable nickels ever discovered. And as unbelievable as that sounds, the more you learn about what makes this coin special, the more it begins to make sense why collectors, appraisers, and experts in numismatics are calling this 2006 Jefferson Nickel one of the greatest era coins in modern history, because beneath its simple appearance lies a tale of misstruck dies, metallic inconsistencies, and visual distortions so unusual that they defy every expectation of modern mint precision. And it all starts with the background of the 2006 nickel, a year that marked a continuation of the new Jefferson design era introduced in 2004 and 2005, following the Westward Journey series that commemorated the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition, meaning the mint was experimenting with slightly altered die hubs and updated engraving processes to give Jefferson a more lifelike look. And this modernization of the design introduced new techniques in digital die creation, but also opened the door for rare minting irregularities. And in the case of this 2006 era coin, what happened was nothing short of spectacular, because experts believe that during the striking process, a perfect storm of mechanical failures occurred, beginning with the planchette, the blank metal disc used for striking the coin, which was discovered to be slightly underweight and displaying traces of an incorrect metal composition, an alloy mix that contained faint but measurable traces of zinc and manganese that should not have been present in a standard cupronickel composition, suggesting that it may have been mistakenly created from a transitional batch of blanks intended for experimental strikes or foreign contract coins, and this alone would make the coin rare. But then we look at the strike itself and see even more mysteries, because the obverse, featuring the forward-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, shows one of the most striking double die effects ever documented on a modern nickel, with Jefferson's eye, lips, and the word Liberty exhibiting clear doubling under magnification, a sign that the die used to strike this coin was improperly hubbed twice with a slight rotation, causing a shadowy duplication of details that collectors absolutely prize. And as if that weren't enough, the reverse of the coin, depicting Monticello, shows a rotated alignment where the building appears slightly twisted relative to the obverse, believed to be the result of a misaligned collar during striking. And when you rotate the coin, the alignment appears off by roughly 15 to 20 degrees, a feature that adds even more uniqueness to an already impossible series of mistakes. But the true wonder lies in the combination of these errors, because while double dies and rotated strikes are rare on their own, finding them together on one coin is almost unheard of. And when you add in the fact that the planchette itself is an alloy anomaly, you're looking at an extremely complex mint error that simply should not exist in such a controlled production year. And yet here it is, defying every quality check and production safeguard that the Philadelphia Mint had in place. And that's where the fascination deepens, because by 2006, the Mint's production process was highly automated, and quality assurance was stringent, making modern mint errors far rarer than those from earlier decades. So when one like this slips through, it instantly becomes a once-in-a-generation discovery. And according to reports from numismatic laboratories, the coin's surface under scanning electron analysis revealed microstructural distortions consistent with a multiple strike event, meaning that after the first strike failed to eject properly, the coin may have been struck again while still partially off-center, causing subtle overlapping impressions, particularly noticeable in the lettering of "In God We Trust" and "E Pluribus Unum," where ghosted outlines of the letters can be seen trailing off into the fields, evidence of at least one partial double strike, and further magnification shows faint radial flow lines that suggest uneven die pressure, as though the die and planchette were misaligned at the moment of striking, which might also explain the warped edge on the lower right rim where metal appears slightly raised and folded inward, a phenomenon sometimes seen in feeder finger jams when the planchette is not seated correctly. And this mix of mechanical and metallurgical errors creates a coin so distinctive that experts call it a compound mint anomaly, one of the rarest classifications in the entire field, and that classification alone drives massive collector interest, because compound anomalies are exponentially rarer than single-type errors. But the story doesn't end there, because this 2006 P nickel also displays what looks like a faint mirror-like finish on one side, leading to speculation that it may have been struck using a proof die that somehow found its way into regular circulation production, a theory that, if true, would make this coin essentially a hybrid between a proof and circulation strike, something so unlikely that it borders on impossible. Yet the evidence in the surface texture, reflectivity, and strike sharpness seems to support that very idea, and this is where the $15 million valuation begins to make sense, because in the numismatic world, the combination of impossible errors, proof-like features, and flawless preservation can skyrocket a coin's value beyond anything previously imagined, and when the first known example of this coin surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the collector community, allegedly discovered by an amateur coin enthusiast who had been sorting through rolls of nickels from a local bank, unaware that they were about to find one of the most valuable modern coins in history. And when the coin was examined by professional graders, they were stunned by the array of visible and microscopic anomalies that all seemed to have occurred in a single minting session, something so rare that many initially thought it was counterfeit. But after extensive testing and metallurgical verification, the authenticity was confirmed, and that changed everything, as numismatic journals and auction houses began to cover the discovery, drawing attention to just how extraordinary this piece truly is. And now experts agree that the combination of misaligned dies, doubled features, alloy irregularities, and proof die characteristics make it an unparalleled minting masterpiece. And while the exact cause may never be fully understood, one theory suggests that during a maintenance period at the Philadelphia Mint in early 2006, a misloaded die or incorrect press configuration might have caused a handful of these hybrid errors to occur before being corrected, which could mean that somewhere out there, perhaps in circulation or sitting unnoticed in a collection, there could be one or two more of these multimillion-dollar nickels waiting to be discovered. And that possibility is what excites collectors the most, because the idea that an ordinary 2006 nickel could hide such immense value adds a thrilling sense of mystery to the hobby. And beyond the technical aspects, the visual appearance of the coin itself is mesmerizing. The doubled lettering catches light in a way that makes it shimmer differently from a normal coin, while the color variations caused by its unusual alloy give it an almost golden or champagne hue. And when turned in the light, faint bands of iridescence run across Jefferson's cheek and hair, a natural result of uneven metal flow during the strike, adding yet another layer of beauty and intrigue. And all of this combined has made this coin not just valuable in dollars, but priceless in its story, because it represents the unpredictable perfection of imperfection, a testament to how even in an age of machines and precision, accidents can produce something magnificent. And collectors often say that this coin blurs the line between art and error, because the very flaws that were never meant to exist have created something breathtakingly unique. And as with all legendary coins, myths have started to form around it, some claiming that the die used for this coin was a retired proof die accidentally reused, others suggesting it may have been part of a secret test for alternative nickel alloys meant for future minting. But regardless of which theory is true, last 1994 P5 USA coin, where ordinary change can turn into extraordinary treasures, because today we are about to explore the incredible story of a coin that has stunned experts, collectors, and even the most seasoned numismatists. A story about a 1994 P5 coin that has been valued at a staggering $12 million because of its unique and astonishing combination of minting errors, metallurgical anomalies, and historical mysteries that make it one of the rarest and most sought-after nickels ever to exist. And as incredible as that number sounds, the truth behind this 1994 P nickel's astronomical value lies not just in its condition or age, But in the amazing chain of minting mistakes that gave birth to a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of imperfection, a coin that embodies the unpredictability and wonder of the US mint process. So buckle up, because we are about to take a long, thrilling journey through the story of how one tiny 5-cent piece from Philadelphia turned into a multi-million-dollar phenomenon, starting from the moment it was struck inside the mint to the day it was discovered by a lucky collector who could hardly believe what they were seeing. And to understand why this coin is worth so much, we first have to look at the year 1994 itself, a time when the US Mint was producing billions of coins with modern machinery that was supposed to be foolproof, precise, and nearly incapable of producing major errors. But despite all that technology and strict quality control, something went terribly wrong with one particular batch of nickels struck at the Philadelphia Mint, because hidden among the millions of flawless 1994 P coins was one with an extraordinary series of defects that turned it into a numismatic legend. And it all begins with the planchette, the blank piece of metal that becomes a coin after striking, because according to experts who have studied this 1994 P-era nickel, the planchette was not made of the standard cupronickel composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, but instead showed traces of an alloy blend that appears to have included small amounts of zinc and manganese, metals never intended for a Jefferson nickel, suggesting that the planchette might have originated from a foreign coin batch or a test strike experiment that accidentally entered circulation production, and this alone would have made the coin interesting. But what came next during the striking process pushed it into the realm of impossibility, because when the coin was struck by the obverse and reverse dies, the alignment and die pressure appear to have malfunctioned dramatically, resulting in a partially off-center strike where Jefferson's portrait is slightly shifted toward the rim, causing parts of the word liberty to stretch and warp while leaving extra metal flow lines near the edge, a feature that immediately catches the eye even to the naked observer. But under magnification, something even more extraordinary is visible: the unmistakable signs of a doubled die on the obverse, where Jefferson's eye, nose, and mouth appear duplicated in a faint but clear secondary image slightly rotated from the original, a hallmark of a die that was hubbed twice at different angles, a phenomenon that occurs rarely and unpredictably during the die-making process. And this doubling continues into the inscriptions, with "In God We Trust" showing visible shadow lettering and "Liberty" appearing thickened and distorted, while on the reverse side, the word Monticello exhibits a ghost-like doubling effect along its lower edge, further evidence that both dies may have been affected, an incredibly rare situation in which both obverse and reverse dies display significant doubling, and experts call this a dual double die error, something almost unheard of in modern US coinage, especially from the 1990s era when digital die production was supposed to eliminate such problems. And this makes the coin's very existence a direct challenge to mint precision. But the story doesn't end there, because in addition to the double dies, this coin also shows rotational misalignment, meaning that when you flip it over, the reverse image is rotated by about 20 degrees relative to the obverse, another striking error that adds to its uniqueness, and close inspection reveals faint raised lines stretching across Jefferson's face and neck, die cracks that formed when the die began to fracture under pressure, leaving raised scars on every coin it struck afterward. And since this coin shows multiple cracks radiating outward, it's believed to have been struck near the very end of that die's life, meaning only a handful of these could have been produced before the die was replaced, making it extremely limited in quantity, possibly even unique. And that's not all, because metallurgical testing revealed a peculiar phenomenon known as lamination peeling on the rim and near Jefferson's collar, where thin layers of metal appear to have lifted slightly from the surface, exposing coppery tones beneath, suggesting a bonding failure in the alloy itself, something that can occur when impurities or incorrect temperature conditions are present during planchette preparation. And all these overlapping issues, misalignment, double dies, die cracks, lamination errors, and alloy irregularities, combine into what numismatists call a compound mint error, one of the rarest classifications possible, because it represents multiple unrelated mistakes occurring in a single coin, each of which individually would already make it rare, but together, they make it nearly one of a kind. And this is why experts and collectors agree that the 1994 P5-cent error coin deserves its multi-million-dollar valuation, because there simply is no other known specimen with this exact combination of mistakes. And when the coin first surfaced, it caused a storm of debate in the numismatic community, with some initially suspecting it was an intentional mint test strike or an altered piece, but upon rigorous examination by grading authorities and metallurgical experts, every feature was confirmed to be genuine and the result of authentic minting anomalies, and the coin received a top-tier certification with the designation Major Mint Error, multiple anomalies, placing it among the rarest of the rare. And soon after that, collectors began making offers, pushing its estimated auction value higher and higher until private appraisers pegged it at $12 million. A figure that might sound unbelievable for a modern nickel, but when you consider the rarity, provenance, and error complexity, it becomes perfectly logical within the world of high-end numismatics, because rarity drives value, and nothing is rarer than a compound error in a modern machine-perfect mint. And the beauty of this story is that it could have gone completely unnoticed, because the coin was originally discovered by a casual collector who was going through a handful of change from a grocery store purchase, not realizing at first that the strange doubling on Jefferson's face and the off-center strike were anything special until they looked closer under a small magnifying glass and saw details that seemed impossible. And from that simple act of curiosity, one of the greatest modern discoveries was made, showing that treasures can still hide in plain sight, waiting to be found by anyone observant enough to notice the little differences that set them apart. And the more experts studied this coin, the more astonishing details they uncovered, like microscopic traces of die polishing lines that crisscross the fields in unusual directions, suggesting that the die may have been resurfaced improperly before striking, further adding to the list of human or mechanical errors involved. And some theories suggest that this coin might have been struck during a transitional period when the mint was adjusting machinery or testing new die setups, possibly explaining the unusual die alignment and pressure inconsistencies, while others think it might have been the result of a malfunction during die installation, where one die wasn't seated correctly, leading to all the misalignments and distortions we now see. But regardless of how it happened, everyone agrees it's a true mint-born anomaly and not something that could ever be replicated outside of the mint, which gives it immense historical and collectible importance, because it captures a literal moment of mechanical failure and human oversight frozen forever in metal. And when you hold such a coin, you're not just holding a 5-cent piece, you're holding a story of how chance and imperfection can create something far beyond its intended value. And that's what makes numismatics so thrilling, because each rare coin like this is a mystery, a time capsule of a mistake that shouldn't have happened but did.